Which iconic pieces of Batman lore aren't from the comics? This is Nerdist Now. Batman is such a huge part of popular culture that even if you're not a fan of the Caped Crusader, you probably know many of the key elements of his lore. You could never have read a single Batman comic or seen a movie or cartoon featuring him, and chances are you're familiar with things like the Batmobile or the Batcave. That's how ubiquitous this character is in most forms of media. But what if we told you several pieces of Dark Knight iconography originated outside the comics? Some important, some small, but they all have changed the Batman universe. Here are some of the biggest examples of bat lore that originated somewhere other than DC Comics, and which have migrated to the printed page. And if you want to read the full list, Eric Diaz has you covered over on Nerdist.com. It's Batman Week, go hang out. Batman has been on the silver screen even before the 1966 movie starring Adam West. Dating back to 1943, there were Saturday matinee serials starring Batman in theaters. The black and white, low-budget films first came out in 1943, followed by a sequel serial in 1949. The serial made lots of changes from the comics, like making Batman a government agent and not an independent vigilante. Boo, thumbs down. These also came out at the height of World War II, and a lot of stuff in them has aged like milk in summertime. But horribly aged things aside, the serial was an enormous success and helped make Batman a household name to millions. The serials introduced some things into the comics: the Batcave, or here, the Bat's Cave, along with the secret entrance to it through a grandfather clock. But the biggest addition comes in the shape of a very dry British man. No, not that one. No, not that one. Yeah, that one. Although he appeared a few months earlier in the comics. According to Batman The Complete History, Alfred, Bruce Wayne's butler, first appeared in Batman number 16 in April of 1943. They believe that the writers of the 1943 serial asked DC Comics to write Alfred into a story which was published prior to the serial's release, as a way of introducing the character. Kind of like when the Ultimates comics designed Nick Fury to look like Samuel L. Jackson and then drop Jackson's name in the comics. And we're all better for that. Like we said earlier, Batman existed on screen before the Adam West show, and one film might have introduced the supernatural into Batman lore. And no, we're not talking about Andy Warhol's movie Batman Dracula, which was made without DC Comics permission. That movie's basically just weird footage of cats. We're talking about the 1967 Filipino movie Batman Fights Dracula. Can you guess what that movie's about? The story centers around a mad scientist named Dr. Zorba, who, after repeatedly being defeated by Batman, finds a way to resurrect Count Dracula, control him, and even make him stronger. It obviously was not made with DC's approval, and the Alfred in this movie is named Turco, and the Robin in the movie is named Reuben, like the sandwich. But it was the first time Batman interacted with Dracula, a concept which would later be explored in the comics Batman: Vampire and Batman and Dracula: Red Rain, as well as the animated film The Batman vs. Dracula. Some of the most monumental additions to the Batman canon come from the many television series. The Batman television series from 1966 was a smash hit right out of the gate, and it influenced the comics in many ways. For starters, it returned many villains that DC Comics shelved years earlier, most notably Catwoman. Once the TV series brought her back, the comics followed suit. For the first 25 years of her existence, Selina Kyle wore a purple and green dress as the feline fatale. But the producers of the TV series made the no-brainer decision to put her in a catsuit. The comics soon started doing the same. Mr.Freeze would not be the mainstream villain we know today without the help of the Batman 66 show. When looking over the older DC Comics for villains to use, the producers found a one-off freeze ray villain named Mr. Zero. In the comics, Mr. Zero was exposed to experimental chemicals, and he became dependent on sub-zero temperatures to survive. The Batman 66 producers renamed him Mr. Freeze. I wonder why! 3 different actors portrayed him over the course of the series run, including classic film director Otto Preminger. Teens just love Otto Preminger. They go wild for him. Wild! And he received the name Victor Freeze, spelled like French fries, and his entire tragic backstory from Paul Dini and Bruce Timm in Batman the Animated Series. Even minor villains like Lockup and Condiment King came from the animated series. Of course, the most iconic character to come out of the 90s cartoon is Harley Quinn, who has gone on to be one of the, most popular comic book characters of all time. She's been in a few movies. The Joel Schumacher Batman movies gave us many things. Bat nipples, an unhinged Tommy Lee Jones performance. Oh, and this guy! Can you believe that made it into a movie? What is that? Play it again. No, play it again. Absolutely wild. And despite all the flaws that some people see in those two movies, I like the first one a lot, it did manage to change the comic forever. The first was Nicole Kidman's character, psychologist Dr. Chase Meridian. Mark Guggenheim brought a version of the character into mainstream continuity in Legends of the Dark Knight back in 2013. Her physical appearance had to change somewhat so as not to have to pay Kidman any royalties. A lesson DC learned thanks to Jack Nicholson. Look that story up. The Good Doctor also showed up as recently as last year in the Fear State crossover. The Schumacher films had some influence back during the New 52 era as well. During this time, Nightwing ditched his signature blue and black for red and black, the exact same colors and design Dick Grayson wore in Batman and Robin. We hardly think this is a coincidence. He wore that costume for years, although he's recently gone back to blue. But we wager whoever designed that red costume had a soft spot for Chris O'Donnell's version of Dick Grayson.
Who the hell are you?
I'm Batman.
Remember when he does laundry by doing karate? That was fun. What a weird movie. And those are just some of the many elements of Batman lore that have been introduced from outside of the comics. But tell us, what do you think? What's your favorite piece of Batman trivia? Do you think the Batman movie will change the comic going forward? Can you believe this ended up in a movie that cost $100 million? Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com. It's Batman! Ah! Why does he say it that way?